Yo guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video. So in today's video, we're going to be making like a tier list that I have decided to make up for today's video. It's going to be for PVE. So I'm going to only make this tier list specifically for PVE. So which characters you should build and why you should build them and so on and so forth. So as you can see, we've got a whole bunch of lists. The best, which means that they can do any sort of PvE game mode without any sort of issue. The semi-best, which means they can do those game modes, however, there are better options that you can go for. Great for World Boss Legends, which means can only do World Boss Legends. They're fantastic there. However, anywhere else, they're not really going to perform the best. Great for ABXL, which means they're just the best in Alliance Battle, Extreme, and Legends. Decent, which means they can do those game modes. However, there are a much better option than those in decent. Support, which, as the name implies, those are support characters, and not worth it is those characters that you shouldn't build if you want to do those certain game modes, since there are much better options than those in not worth it. So let's go ahead and start with the best. So the first character in the best is obviously none other than Doctor Strange. So Doctor Strange, as we know, he's the best PvE character in the game right now, and I do highly recommend you getting him. He can be fantastic for World Boss Legend, and it can score very greatly for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. So I do highly recommend him. The next character on our list is Storm. She recently just got a new X-Men uniform, and that X-Men uniform actually bumped her up a lot and has taken down some other characters, which we will talk about soon enough. She's really good for World Boss Legends, and she can score amazingly for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legend. Specifically her, because of her typing, you can use her for those two mutant days that we have, instead of building two separate characters for those two separate days. So you can go ahead and build one character who's also not a premium, and you can get the same score, if not better. So yeah, the next character, it is Ghost Rider. Now, yes, Ghost Rider is very old. He's, I think, 2 years now, maybe three, and he is a seasonal. However, we do not have anyone who's better than him with the same typing, so that's why he's still up there as the best. Again, he can still do amazingly for World Boss Legends and is perfect for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. But again, do keep in mind he is a seasonal. The next character on our list, it is Jean for semi-best. Now, some of you might argue in the comments that no, Jean is the best character in the game and whatnot. However, you gotta keep in mind that her typing is also what makes her bad, because her typing is the worst in the game. So you're not going to be able to climb in World Boss Legends, and there are better options than her that are free and that are cheaper than her for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. Because do keep in mind that you have to pay 6,600 gems just to get her, and she's a native tier 2. And on top of all of that, you're still going to need to pay for her uniform. So yeah, regardless, she's still great, but again, she's not the best. The next character on our list, it is Venom. He did get this new uniform, which was a couple of months ago, if I'm not wrong, and he is really good. I do recommend him as well, but he can do World Boss Legends greatly. He also replaced some few characters, which again we will get into them soon enough. He can score decently for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. So yeah. The next character on our list for semi-best is Gwenpool. Now, she's obviously a very good character. You can see a lot of people recommending her, especially for new players, because she also did replace Gwenpool. Sorry, she replaced Spider-Gwen for World Boss Legends and some Alliance Battle Extreme and Legend days, because she cannot do the ones with hero speed, which I'll tell you who we can use for that certain day. Regardless, though, she can still do amazingly for World Boss Legend and Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. The next character on our list, it is Gamora. Now that is the character that you can use instead of Spider-Gwen for the hero speed days. She's great for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legend, and she can do fantastically in World Boss Legends. I do as well recommend her. The last character on our semi-best, it is Captain Marvel. She still really is like really great, and I do recommend her. However, do keep in mind she's not as great as she was back then. She still is great, but if you have an option to, for example, build her or Storm or Doctor Strange, then no, you would take Doctor Strange or Storm. So yeah, she is the last character on our semi-best list. The next character for World Boss Legends is Captain America Sharon Rogers. Now, do keep in mind, she has this Winter Frost, I think it was called, and she also has the Poseidon armor. You don't have to get her seasonal to get her performance in World Boss Legends. You can still use her Poseidon armor to get the same performance, if not a little worse, but her seasonal is obviously going to be the best one for World Boss Legends. The next character on our list, it is Hela. Now, Hela is very great for World Boss Legends, and she can also be used as a support for PvE and PvP. However, in PvP, she's going to need her artifact. So, regardless, you can still use her for World Boss Legend as a dealer, but usually people use her as a support. So yeah, the next character for World Boss Legend, it is Captain America with his new zombie uniform. He's really great there, and personally, I haven't tested him because I don't have his zombies uniform, nor do I have one tier 3. However, I did see a lot of people use him, and he performs greatly on World Boss Legends. The next character, it is Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray Bill, I have personally used him, and I do have him on tier 4, and he has a mighty energy. He still performs amazingly in World Boss Legends, and he can clear in really great times. He can also do Alliance Battle Extreme, however, do keep in mind there's still obviously other options that you can consider. So yeah, the next character, it is Thanos. Now, Thanos, keep in mind that his Farmos is an April Fool's seasonal. However, it's not paywall. But uh, overall, he's still great for World Boss Legends. And again, from my experience, he is great, fantastic for World Boss Legends. In fact, he is also better than my Beta Ray Bill, even though he has just an energy compared to a Mighty Energy. Regardless, though, he's still very good, and he can still do Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. So generally speaking, I do highly recommend Thanos. However, do keep in mind he's a native tier 2. The next character is a character I don't expect many of you to know and expect him to even be in World Boss Legends, is Carnage. Now, someone in the Discord server, our Discord server, did decide to test Carnage for World War Legends, and it turns out if you give him an energy, he can turn into a hybrid, and he can still perform approximately the same as Captain America, slightly worse. But regardless, he's very great for World Boss Legends. I was even personally shocked when I found out that he was actually even considered for World Boss Legends. So if you do have him at tier 4 and not Captain America, then he can still be used for World Boss Legends. He's really great. So yeah, the next character is Miles Morales. Now Miles Morales, even though it's been like, I don't know however long, no one even came close to Miles, which is surprising. So Miles is still up there somehow. So I don't know if I should recommend him or not. Yes, there are better options with of approximately the same typing, because I don't think in Alliance Battle Extreme and Legend there is male speed. So if that is the case, then no, you'd be better off going with Gamora. However, regardless, for World Boss Legend, he's still good. He's still up there nowadays somehow. I do not know why didn't Netmarble replace him, but regardless, he's still very good. The next character, it is Iron Man. Now, for Iron Man, he is great only specifically for World Boss Legends. However, if I'm not wrong, in the new update, they did put his new Model Nil uniform in guided quest. So he will be recommended more often for those new players because he can still do amazingly for World Boss Legends. So yeah, that is for Iron Man. The next character, it is Rogue. Now her uniform is a seasonal, and she's not a premium, so you can still go ahead and build her. However, her uniform is a seasonal. Personally, I have not tried her, so don't know if she can compete with others. However, from like the experience of other people that I spoke to, they did say that she's really good and is she is sort of worth that paywall uniform, but at the same time she's not. Regardless, though, she can be great for World Boss Legends. The next character, it is Human Torch. Now, I expect many of you to already have Human Torch and maybe Transcend Potential with his newest uniform or Transcend Potential level 80. So if you do, then he's really great for World Boss Legends. However, do keep in mind there are better options than Human Torch that can last you much longer. For example, Doctor Strange. They almost have the same typing, however, it's just a super villain between superhero. But regardless, though, he's still great for World Boss Legends and he is somewhat recommended by some people. The next character, it is Wolverine. Now, Wolverine is generally not going to be used that much on World Boss Legend. However, those who have an energy on him will use him for World Boss Legends since he can do it. If I'm not wrong, one of the people in the Discord server did gore a very high stage. I can't exactly remember which one, but they did a high stage with Wolverine, and he was able to clear it at a really good time. So generally, he can be used for World Boss Legends, though I don't think many people are going to recommend him to use him there. The last character for World Boss Legends, it is Thor. Now, compared to Thor and Beta Ray Bill is generally going to be better for most of the game modes. However, Thor is recommended for World Boss Legend Plus since he's better and he's a rage character, and generally rage characters are better for World Boss Legend Plus. However, if you already have him, then he can still perform greatly for World Boss Legends and some Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. Though do keep in mind, if you're going to use him for World Boss Legends or Alliance Battle, then no, Beta Ray Bill would be much better for you. The next character for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends, it is Luna Snow. Now this doesn't need much of an introduction. We already know how good she can be, and her uniform is a seasonal. So yeah, you do gotta keep that in mind. However, it's a paywall seasonal, so she's going to come in maybe late July or early August. So do keep that in mind. The next character, it is Scarlet Witch. She can also be great for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. However, if I'm not wrong, people are not recommending you to use her because of her typing. She has other typing, which is not really the best for her. So generally speaking, I don't think that many people are going to recommend her. However, she's still very, very great for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legend. The next character, it is Hulk. Now, Hulk did drop from being like semi-best down to Alliance Battle Extreme and Legend because obviously he's been replaced many times, but he's still a great option for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends if you still have him at tier 4. If you do not, then there's obviously better options that you can use for instead of instead of Hulk. But generally speaking, he is still very great for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. The next character, it is Bucky or Winter Soldier. Now, generally, I haven't used him yet, and I don't think that I will because I already have someone who could be better than him. But a lot of people did use him, and he does actually score a lot in Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. So yeah, do keep that in mind. He can be very great for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. So before we move on to the next character, make sure to check out Bobsarge's YouTube channel if you want to know how much each of these characters are going to score. Since generally I think he's the best Alliance Battle player, if I'm not wrong, but he can actually still showcase you most of the characters here, and you will see how much they can score. The next character is Kingpin. Now, this is the character that I have, which is why I'm not going to use Bucky. But still, Kingpin is a good option. He can also do World Boss Legends, though he is still recommended for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. But I haven't tested him yet since he's level 70 tier 3. However, I've seen from a lot of people he can still perform very, very great in Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. If I'm not wrong, one of the people in the Discord server did score 8 mil with him in Alliance Battle Legends, but I can't exactly remember if it was tier 3 or level 80 tier 4 or level 80 tier 3. So yeah. The next character, it is Gladiator. Now, he also doesn't need much of an introduction. Many people have him at tier 4 since he's very, very good for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. The next character, it is going to be Loki. However, do keep in mind, there's something about Loki. So, for Loki, he is very good for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legend, don't get me wrong. However, he's going to need probably the most stacked build you can get for him. I'm talking maybe a brilliant rage, 6-star artifact, etc., etc. And he's very, very hard to play with. So generally, not many people are going to recommend him because of how much resources you're going to dump onto him and how good you're going to need to play the character. So yeah, you do have to keep that in mind. The next character, who also is a seasonal, is Crescent. Now, Crescent did get this new April Fool's uniform. However, she is very, very good for that one day, for which is the Combat Female Day, if I'm not wrong. So generally, I personally don't have anyone to use for that day. However, the new Crescent Tier 4, it will be very, very useful there. But do keep in mind, if I'm not wrong, she does not have a cancel for that day. So you're going to need to use a Tier 4 Striker or a Switch Cancel. So yeah, that is for Crescent. The last character for Alliance Battle Extreme, it is Bullseye. Now, Bullseye is also very good for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legend, and I've seen many people recommend him and build him because he can be really good there. Now, that was all for Alliance Battle Extreme and Legend. Again, I will put Bobsarge's YouTube channel down in the description for you to check it out, and if you want to know how much each character scores. So for the next list, it is going to be the decent tier. So for the decent tier, it is going to obviously just be like characters that are great for all the game modes. However, there are obviously the better options. So let's go ahead and get started. But do keep in mind that this list is not for giant boss race or zombie survival or any other PvE game mode other than those two. Because generally speaking, most people are going to play World Boss Legends or Alliance Battle Extreme and Legends. And for giant boss raids, any tier 4 can do it, whether it's decent, not worth it, etc., etc. And for zombie survival, I cannot exactly give you a correct option because again, it all relies on the skill cancel for that day. So I cannot really give an option for zombie survival. However, regardless, the first character for decent, it is going to be Cyclops. Psylocke, sorry, Psylocke. So for Psylocke, obviously she can be really good. She used to be meta. However, now she's been replaced by obviously Storm because not only you need to pay 6,600 for her, you're going to need to also get her seasonal uniform. It's a paywall as well. However, for Storm, she's free. You can build her at any time, and her uniform is not seasonal. So that's why we put Psylocke on decent. The next character, it is Gambit. Now, Gambit, again, he used to be meta, but you gotta keep in mind that his uniform is a seasonal as well, and he's a premium. So it's going to cost a lot of time, and you're going to need to pay for his seasonal, which is full price, and you're not gonna get it for a discount. And now, obviously, the better option, it is again going to be Storm. So yeah, since she's also not a seasonal nor a premium. The next character, it is Null. Now, Null is really good for World Boss Legends. He can be good for World Boss Legends. However, again, there are a better option, which is Thanos. Thanos has a downside, but also Null has a downside. The downside for Thanos is that he's an April Fool's seasonal. However, the downside for Null is he's a native tier 3 compared to Thanos, who's only a native tier 2. So yeah, that is, do keep that in mind for if you want to buy Thanos or Null. The next character, it is Cable. Now, again, it's the same story as for Gambit. He's not a premium or his seasonal is a paywall. However, he is a World Boss Ultimate character. And if you don't have him, you'd have to sacrifice, I think, 10 of your World Boss Legend clears just to get Cable. When you have, again, Storm, who's a better option, and she's free, you can get her anywhere. So yeah, again, for Cable, he's decent for Alliance Battle, Extreme, and Legends, and also for World Boss Legends, but again, Storm is a better option. The next one, it is going to be Star-Lord. Now, again, Star-Lord, I think he used to have a chance where we thought that he can be good, but he turned out to not be the best. But regardless, he still has there are options that are better than him. So, for example, Doctor Strange, but again, his typing is not exactly the same. But generally, I think Beta Ray Bill or Thor are going to be a better option than him, because I think in Alliance Battle, Extreme, and Legend, and World Boss Legends, I don't think there is a Blast Alien Day. So yeah, that is why we're going to take those two as a better option. The last character for decent, it is going to be Mr. Fantastic or Reed. So Reed Richards used to be again, he used to be good for World Boss Legends. However, Venom is a better option for you to go ahead and take. So that was all for the decent tier. The next tier, it is going to be the support tier, which, as the name implies, is just going to be the characters with a support and who are the best. So the first character, it is going to be Taskmaster. Now, the only reason that she's, for example, above Nick Fury is because of her new uniform. So her new uniform changed the original one from a male to a female. So you're going to get a lot more options for certain days. And second of all, you're going to have double supports for you to use. If you want to use a male combat for male days, for example, or male boss legends if you're climbing, the same applies for her newest, which is a female. Her support is a increased damage dealt to supervillain and heroes by 45%. So again, she is really, really, really good, and she also does have a leadership, but I don't think people are going to use her leadership. She also does have a tier 2 passive, but again, this is only for Thunderbolt's ally, which is, I guess it's only Sentry, but I don't think that he also even is considered as a Thunderbolt ally, so regardless, it's not going to be that worth it for the tier 2 passive. So yeah, that was for Taskmaster. The next character that we also got a new uniform for is Cyclops. Now, personally, for me, I recently just also got Cyclops because his support is actually really, really good, and he also does have a tier 4 on top of that, so you can go ahead and use him. So he has a leadership, and he also has a 4-star passive. His leadership is increasing basic attacks by 50% and defenses by 30%. And his passive is applies to all allies, 40% of increase of energy attacks. On top of that, increasing basic damage dealt to villains by 30%. So generally speaking, he is very, very good, and I do highly recommend you getting him. The next character, it is going to be Nick Fury. Now, for Nick Fury, it's a little bit of a different story. So his leadership is increasing basic damage to superhero allies by 50%. And he also has a tier 2 passive, which is against superhero allies, which increases all defense by 30% and damage dealt to villains by 50%. That is his base uniform. However, for his new uniform, the Secret Avengers, The only difference that I think many people have noticed between the two is I think a 10% increase from both the leadership and the tier 2 passive, which again increases all basic attack damage by 60% for his leadership, and for his tier 2 passive is increasing damage dealt to villains by 60%. These are still both for superhero allies. So generally speaking, people aren't going to recommend you to get his newest uniform unless you really care about that 10%. So generally speaking, he's still good in his base uniform, but generally speaking, I don't see many people recommending you to get Nick Fury's uniform for that 10%. So for the next character, it is going to be Mystique. Now, Mystique has a really good support on her tier 2 passive, which is increasing basic damage dealt to villains by 45% and to heroes by 50%. So compared to her base, which again is increasing to supervillain and heroes. For villains it's 40% and for heroes it is 45%. So that is all for Mystique. The next character is going to be Ancient One. Now, Ancient One, the only reason that I don't see that many people going to recommend him is because there's many reasons as to why, but the main one that stands out is obviously that he's a seasonal. So that's one. And his leadership is not, his support is not the best. So generally speaking, I can see more people using Cyclops over Ancient One. So yeah, his leadership is increase of energy damage 55%, which sounds great, but it only applies to blast allies compared to Cyclops, which gives it to all allies. And his tier 2 passive, which gives you increase to all elementals by 45%. This one applies to all allies, but again, keep in mind that he is a seasonal. So yeah, that is all for Ancient One. The next character, it is going to be War Machine. Now, War Machine, again, his support is not the best, but it's still great. However, his support, which is mainly on his 4-star passive, is only going to apply to technokinetic allies. And for his leadership, it only applies to blast types, which is increasing basic damage, basic attack by 40%. And his 4-star passive is 30% increase of HP and increasing damage dealt supervillain by 40% and decreases damage received by villains by 20%. But again, it is only for technokinetic allies, which the only one that's going to be worth it out of the bunch is Iron Man, or the ones with machine tag allies. So yeah, that was all for War Machine. And the last one, which I guess a lot of people are not going to recommend you to get him because his support isn't even that great, it is going to be Wong. So for Wong, the number one issue is his leadership is not the best at all. And the second one is he doesn't give it to all allies, it just gives to machine tag allies. To magic allies. So basically, the only one that's the best out of the magic allies is Doctor Strange. But even then, Doctor Strange has better options for support. So for the so for his 4-star passive, it is increasing basic damage dealt to heroes and villains both by 53%, and his leadership is 100% chance to grant all damage immunity only when at a 25% rate of getting hit. So that is going to be an issue because generally speaking, Doctor Strange has much better supports other than Wong. So yeah, that was all for the last character for our support. So now for the not worth tier, I'm going to speed fire all of these since again they're not worth it, and I'll just tell you who are the better options. For the first one, it is going to be Black Panther. The better option is obviously going to be Venom. The next character, it is going to be Ant-Man, which the better option is going to be Miles Morales, since again they're the same typing, and he's going to be a better option. The next character, it is going to be Black Bolt. So for Black Bolt, he is a villain, but he's also a universal villain. So generally speaking, the one that's going to be better than him, it's going to be Thanos. Or if you want, you can go for Jean, but again, she's really expensive, so that's why I'm thinking Thanos, even though he has a seasonal. For the next character, it is going to be Deadpool's Nice Pool, which again he also has the same tag as that. Sorry, the same typing as that of Miles, but again, Miles is a human compared to Nice Pool, who is a mutant. The next character, it is going to be Doctor Octopus, which he is a combat villain. So generally speaking, you've got not that much options if you're going to consider it. However, the best one that you can get out of the bunch is probably going to be Captain America, since he's a villain and combat. So that's going to be your best one. Or if you want for Alliance Battle, Extreme, and Legend, which is what he is initially for, you can go for Hulk. The next character, it is going to be Hawkeye, which again, he is a speed. So for Hawkeye, you can just go ahead and take, again, Miles Morales. And for the next character, it is Magneto, which he doesn't really need that much of an introduction since we already know who replaced Magneto. It is going to be Doctor Strange. The next character, it is Odin. Now for Odin, you can just use Thor or Beta Ray Bill. Again, those two are better. The next character, it is Moon Knight, which the better option for Moon Knight is again Venom, same typing as that of Black Panther or Venom. And the last character, it is going to be Spider-Gwen. The better option is going to be Gamora or Gwenpool. So yeah, that was all for the tier list. This tier list is only made for PvE again, because I do not know that much about PvP. So this is going to be your PvE tier list. And generally speaking, this is hopefully the as good as I can get it to be. So yeah, this is all for today's video. This is how the tier list looks like, and if you want, you can go ahead and take it, do what you want with it, share it, I don't mind. So yeah, that was all for today's video. If you have enjoyed today's video, do make sure to subscribe and like, and let me know down in the comments if you have gained any benefit out of it. So yeah guys, I'm going to go ahead and see you all in the next video.